Scott Morrison has become the first Australian Prime Minister to visit Timor-Leste in over a decade as it celebrates 20 years of independence. The visit has been overshadowed by protesters, though, demanding the government drop spying charges against 2 Australian whistleblowers. Southeast Asia correspondent Anne Barker reports from Dili.
For the Prime Minister, this is an historic visit to celebrate Timor-Leste's independence and the formalising of a maritime deal that sets out a permanent sea boundary between the two countries.
Thanks for having me here.
The treaty will give the young and impoverished nation a majority share of oil and gas royalties from the Timor Sea.
So that is a moment for great celebration of an extraordinary young nation that we are pleased to call a friend.
But it's the history behind this agreement that's still causing anger. 87-year-old widow Shirley Shackleton has campaigned for Timor-Leste for 44 years, since her journalist husband was murdered at Ballabo. She confronted the Prime Minister with a petition of 4,000 names. They're demanding the government drop the prosecution of 2 Australian whistleblowers.
Excuse me, I'd like to go to the Prime Minister.
One, known only as Witness K, exposed Australia's bugging of the Timorese cabinet room during the treaty negotiations.
Excuse me, don't bully me. I want to see the Prime Minister of Australia. It's wrong, and we should be proud because he's telling the truth and being punished, and we can't have that in Australia.
Despite the controversy surrounding the treaty, at least one former president believes Timor and Australia remain good neighbours.
Australia is very important for the viability, the survival, the independence of this country. So it must do everything to have an absolutely good, solid relationship with Australia.
And to mark this new chapter in the relationship, Scott Morrison has announced 2 funding packages to improve Timor's internet connectivity and to provide assistance to build a new naval base on Timor's north coast. Tens of thousands of Timorese will turn out to celebrate the anniversary of the independence vote tonight, 20 years of freedom from Indonesian occupation and a time to heal old wounds. Anne Barker, ABC News, Dili.
Well, Anne joins me now from Timor-Leste. Now, Anne, we heard in your story there that it was a busy day for Scott Morrison and Marise Payne. Can you tell us a bit more about what you thought were some of the more significant key events?
Well, look, Yvonne, the reason that Scott Morrison and the Foreign Minister Marise Payne came to Timor was to sign that maritime treaty. It's a treaty that's been in negotiation for decades, and it's gone through several incarnations, if you like. The original treaty that was planned would have actually given a 50-50 share to both Timor and Australia. And it was because of the bugging operation that Witness K exposed, because of his whistleblowing, if you like, that Timor forced Australia back to the negotiating table and said it wouldn't accept that original treaty. It's the new treaty now that gives a far bigger share of royalties from gas and oil in the Timor Sea. That was the one that was signed last year in New York, and it's now been ratified by both countries. Both leaders from both countries, including Scott Morrison, put the last signatures on that treaty today. It now comes into effect, and Timor-Leste is hoping it will underpin its future by bringing far greater revenues from the Greater Sunrise Field when it's developed. They want to develop it on the south shore of East Timor, and also from other fields that are still in production.
And you would have witnessed those activists marching through Dili. What did they have to say?
That's right. There have been a spate of protests this week by Timorese who are angry at the prosecution of Witness K and his lawyer Bernard Kaleri. As we saw, Shirley Shackleton was the one who delivered a petition of 4,000 names to the government today. Marise Payne, the Foreign Minister, actually took that petition from her and will hand it to the government. And those protesters are saying that these 2 men, the whistleblowers, are heroes because it was their actions in exposing that bugging that led to a far better treaty for Timor-Leste. Now tonight there are massive celebrations going on as I speak at Tasitolu, just west of Dili. Scott Morrison is one of the VIPs at that event. There are fireworks, there's music, there's a massive crowd out there. It's probably almost certainly the biggest party since independence itself. People celebrating the 20th anniversary of the referendum to vote for freedom from Indonesia, but also the ratification of that maritime treaty that they do hope will mean so much for Timor's future.
And thanks for updating us there.
Thank you.
Anne Barker in Timor-Leste.